in continuing our discussion on backing up your system files and directories. We've talked about tar a moment ago, and now we want to talk about GZIP and BZIP too. Now normally when we talk about backing up the system and we use tar, we normally use a switch with tar that actually uses GZIP or BZIP, and that's the -Z switch for GZIP and the -J switch for BZIP2. And we don't have to use the dashes. As we've seen in the earlier session, we can combine those with other options as well. They are most often used with tar, but you can use them by themselves, and by themselves they can compress individual files. They can also compress directories as well. You may want to compress them to save space without tarring them. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility. You can use tar with them or without them. It doesn't matter. Now there's another tool worth mentioning that's called LZOP. It works a little bit differently than GZIP and BZIP, but the principle is still the same. It does compression on files. It also works with tar, but in different ways. Now which tool you use is basically personal preference, and sometimes that personal preference is based upon how fast you need the tool to work, and which may depend upon how many files you have to compress and how large they are. It also may depend on compression. How much do you want it compressed? And it also may depend on your basic experience with the tool. Most people use the tool they're most familiar with and have used the most often. So some people use GZIP automatically because that's what they've worked with, and some people may use BZIP too because that's what they've worked with. If you do a little research on the three tools, basically you'll see that LZOP is probably the fastest, followed by GZIP and then BZIP2. BZIP's basically the slowest. However, BZIP usually offers a little bit better compression than the other two tools, so it really depends on what you're looking for. Having said that, let's go ahead and take a look at GZIP and BZIP2 and how they work with compression. Okay, we're in our FreeBSD machine once again, and what I want to do is talk about GZIP and GUnzip for a moment. Now GZIP is the basic tool, and it can compress files. GUnzip can actually uncompress files naturally. Let's take a look at GUnzip first. We have a zipped tar file, a gzip tar file in our directory here, allfiles.tar.gz, and we know it's a gzipped file because of the .gz extension. You don't have to use this, but as a matter of convention you probably should. Now if we simply want to uncompress this tar ball, we simply type in gzip allfiles.tar.gz and hit enter, and then when we look again we have allfiles.tar. Now notice it uncompressed them and it got rid of the compressed version, the tar.gz file. You don't have to do this. If you put a -K with GUnzip, it can actually keep the original file, the allfiles.tar.gz, and create the new file, allfiles.tar. So you can have both of them. There may be instances when you might want to do that. It really doesn't matter. Now let's say I want to compress something. Now when we compress something, we could compress a tar ball that's already tarred up, or we can compress an individual file. There are also ways and switches that you can compress entire directories. Let's go ahead and just do a basic gzip. Let's gzip file1 and see what we got. Now we have file1.txt.gz. Now we did not keep the original file 1, we simply compressed it. Again, there's a switch you can use that will keep the original file 2 if you like. You don't have to simply delete the other file. Now BZIP2 works basically the same way. It has its own set of switches and so forth, but the big difference between BZIP2 and GZIP is performance, speed, amount of compression. Essentially they work almost identically. So we're not going to do a demonstration of BZIP2. You can play around with it on your own and just kind of get an idea of how much it compresses as compared to GZIP, and see which one you like the best. See which one serves your purpose the best. We're going to go ahead and close this discussion out on compression tools. We've talked about BZIP2 and how they relate to tar, how they're used with tar, but also how they can be used by themselves.